And Justin, just to take this moment where we are sitting now at this very moment, nor our past or our future can define who we really are. This very moment that where we are now, this now moment is basically the only definition of who we truly are.
And if you think you are perfect, and you've got everything sorted out on a spiritual level, I want to challenge you. Can you go sit for 20 minutes, just 20 minutes, in pure silence, not thinking, not saying anything, not praying, nothing, just being silent and listening?
I mean, if you're watching this today, you would know there is some dark stuff that you ponder about, that you think about. You might even be thinking about suicide like I did a few months ago, where I had my inner circle that was actually saving me out of the grip of self-destruction, of committing suicide, where I could lean into the uncomfortable and being vulnerable. And that's one of the biggest things that is keeping us away from connecting with people and uniting with people, is not being vulnerable.
Welcome to the Life of Valour podcast. My name is Justin van Vieren, and it's so good to have all of you watching today. Today, my guest is a very close friend and really one of the coolest individuals you'll ever meet. Roché Oosthuizen is an entrepreneur as well as an incredible life and relationship coach. He has been passionate about ministry and serving people since the age of 15 and naturally activates people to fully embrace God's purpose for their lives. Roché believes in the power of authenticity and vulnerability as catalysts to bring personal liberation in order to spark your life assignment and turn life's biggest upsets and challenges into hope and practical solutions for others. He now serves customers and his surrounding community through his business, Joe Roche Coffee, which is not just about selling coffee, but also helping vulnerable women and children who are trapped in very abusive systems. Roché also coaches and guides many individuals, couples, and families to break through the issues that created defeated identities, wounded relationships, and personal bondage so that they can embrace and love themselves and each other and thereby be freed to fulfill their full potential in life. He currently resides in Johannesburg in South Africa with his wife Shamini and his two daughters Luame and Miane. Roché, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Justin. It's awesome to be here, and thank you for having me on this call. I appreciate it so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me. And I'm really looking forward to this. There's some really, really interesting topics we're going to be talking about. And a lot of things that even in my life, you've completely, changed the way I think about a lot of these certain things in our walk together. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about some of these issues and get your insight on them and be able to share that with all of the viewers today. So I think instead of getting a whole lot of small talk, let's jump into the topic in general. So today we're going to be talking a lot about identity. We're going to be talking a lot about being real and authentic as a means of actually overcoming a lot of problems and a lot of issues in life. A lot of stuff that might have happened to the viewers in childhood or in their formation, their formative years, which could have somehow impacted them on a very internal level, inhibiting their behavior, causing certain addictions, causing so many, problems in life where they try so hard and a person, in your mind does everything you can with, reading books and, positive thinking and all this type of stuff, but that behavior and those patterns keep coming back. And so I think that's the liberation and how do you liberate yourself out of those issues that we want to get into today. But before we get there, I want to start off with the basic question, Roché. If you can share with the viewers, just what is your story? Where did you come from? What formed you? And, where did it all start to making Roché who Roché is today?
All right, awesome. Thank you for the question, Justin. All right, I wish I was one of those children that actually had a very easy upbringing. But for me, it was in my adolescence years, the part where we get formed basically, and the part that is supposed to form our identity. They normally say if you want to change someone on the Roman Catholic Church, they've got this thing where they say if you want a person to be a Roman Catholic for all of their life, just give them for that first 7 years. Now, in that very first 7 years of my life, it was actually not that easy. My mom and dad got married, and 2 years later, they got divorced. And a year after that, my mom actually got married to a guy that was a complete narcissistic, psychopathic guy that was abusive, that was addicted to alcohol, and was very, very abusive towards me. And obviously later my sister, 3 years later, my sister came. And also my little brother, that's 6 years apart from one another. But in that time, I was actually at the age of 3. My mom got married with this guy, and it completely changed the course of life for me, in that sense that he wasn't just abusive towards my mom, but was also abusive towards us as children, and would have basically, when he got into that fit rages, when he was under the influence of alcohol, he would abuse us. And so it would basically, we would feel a sense of fear and a sense of not being worthy. And obviously in that sense of time, as being a dad to 2 beautiful daughters, and obviously one of my children at the age of 5 is pretty much in the gap and in the age where I went through all of that stuff. So it kind of, as a father, projecting what happened to myself in that time onto my 5-year-old, that basically makes a lot of sense. And I see the vulnerability and how children at that age look up to parents and to their peers, basically to form their identity and to form who they are, and trying to just acknowledge, listen, where's my place on earth, and where's my place? Well, my place in this world. Where's my place in this world, and where's my stance? And in that time, basically. And I don't want to dwell too much into the gross and gory stuff of that, but yeah, I was obviously in that time also I was physically abused, but also molested by 2 family members, my stepfather, my stepfather's dad, and an uncle. And so I went through a lot of stuff that I was exposed on a very early age to stuff that a child is not supposed to be exposed to. So my humanity got stripped from me from a very, very young age. I was very vulnerable to basically form my identity. And what happened is that my mom divorced my stepfather at the age of 8. And at the age of 10, she remarried again to a guy that I today call my father. And he was the only sense of stability that basically came into our lives at that very moment in time. But to understand, I mean, if you understand the whole process of adolescence and forming your identity up until the age of 7, I was already past that. And there's a third guy coming into our lives. And I basically didn't give him a chance at all. So what happened is that I was very rebellious towards him, and I was very resistant towards him. And to give him a fair chance, obviously today, when I look back as a father, looking back then, I mean, he was, at that time, he was 23 years old, trying to be a dad to an almost 10-year-old boy. So we didn't quite have a relationship at that moment. And I tried to form an identity with a father figure. My mom was a very strong picture for me as somebody that loves you and somebody that adores you. And I also struggled for a very long time in my life relating even to my creator as a father figure, because I didn't have that. So luckily, and I thank God for the fact that I didn't latch onto negative role models at that time. So my role models, because I'm a very sport fanatic kind of person, so my role models were people like Hansie Cronje from the South African cricket team, and David Beckham he played for Manchester United at that time. So I just wanted to be like that guy. So that was kind of my superhero. And I started building a hybrid picture of a dad in my head and how a man actually should look like. So I took this personality trait, this look, this kind of attitude. So wherever I saw a strong manly figure that I wanted to, basically I thought, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to look like that, or I should talk like that, or I should reason like that. then I would start to copy and paste. And copy and paste started to become a very big thing in my life for a long time, where I couldn't basically decide and make things, just create things out of my own, because I was too scared to put myself out there, for this only reason that I really didn't know what my voice was, because I didn't have an identity. So by the age of 15, I started to play drums, and I was at this Christian festival that I basically played drums the very first time that I put myself out there. And obviously, as a young teenager at the age of 15, the hormones were flying high, and there was girls that actually celebrated your talent, and they were like, woo, all over the place. And I was like, freaking right on. And this thing that I basically enjoyed as a talent started to become something that I can lean myself towards when it comes to finding your identity. Because I struggled with a lot of rejection, this thing started to give me an acceptance. And the thing that was...
Maybe a lot of affirmation for the first time.
Yes, affirmation for the very first time. So I was basically, somebody saw me for the very first time, and they saw me through my music. So my music started to become something that I latched on. And what actually happened was a very toxic kind of relationship with my talent. And I didn't realize it at that time. There was this movie long time ago of this Venus flytrap where Seymour, the guy that basically gives it a drop of blood every time, then it starts to grow. And so the big thing was the more the Venus flytrap basically asks for the blood, the bigger the plant starts to get. And at the end, it was saying that it was this big plant, and it says, Seymour, feed me. And Seymour was like, he was drained. He didn't have any blood no more. And he was like, I don't have any blood. I've got nothing to feed you anymore. And that's basically what my talent started to become for me in a process of years, which will later lead us on to one of the questions that I want to address is failure. But anyways, what happened was that this started to grow, and I started to make a living out of my talent. So the moment that when I left school, there was always this passion in my heart. When I asked my mom the other day, when I saw a person post something on Facebook saying, what did you always wanted to become when you were a child? And I was like, yeah, I can't remember. Did I want to become a policeman? Did I want to become a fireman? What did I want to become? And my mom replied to me back, and she said to me, you always wanted to be a minister. And so what happened was I just basically, after school, I just got into that. And there was a lot of stuff that happened, obviously, in that time. So I don't want to go too much into the gory and ugly details. But all I know is that my identity was not secure. It wasn't firm. And every time when I started to build something up regarding my identity, it would break and it would fall. Because whenever you build something whenever you build something on a foundation that is not stable, it will start showing cracks, and it will break and it will fall down. But the moment when you build something on a solid foundation, which in my case today, which I always thought I had, because I always had a very passionate love for God since the age of 10. I was very, very much into it. Well, not just from the age of 10, but actually I just became very much aware of Him at the age of 10. But even before that, I had a very big yearning for His presence and and connecting with Him. And but if you have that solid foundation, it says basically in Psalm 127 verse 1 that if God does not build the house, then the builders build in vain. So I actually put that verse out there for anything in my life. If He does not build my identity, and if my identity is not securely in Him, then I built my identity in vain. And that I actually saw through the years, leading up to a very big pivotal moment in my life. But what happened was that I couldn't differentiate anymore between my talent and my identity, because I've built my identity so much around my talent that it became perfectionistic, if that's the right word. But it became so perfectionism over this talent that when the music is bad, I'm bad. If the music is good, I'm good. So I couldn't differentiate anymore between the quality of my music and the quality of my directing versus who I was or who I am. So my music actually became my identity. So whenever people talk about me and whenever I put myself out there, it would have been Roché, who are you? No, I'm a worship leader, or I'm a music artist, and I basically just throw my talent out there because that was my picture of an identity.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a phenomenal story, and I can't imagine what some of those things must be like. So I just want to also say massive respect for just being able to open up about those things in that story, and it's really inspiring. But I think where I wanted to go with this, you've already started kind of touching on it in terms of how did that childhood and that formative process and all those things that were ingrained into you negatively affect you, in your adult life, where let's say you're now free of that household and you're free of the, that growing up environment, you're now your own man, self-determining, but there's a lot of subconscious patterns and a lot of, problems that you carried out of that. And I think what you're basically saying is that a lot of the issues that you had to either, plaster, or a lot of things that you had to, find alternative identities about, or a lot of things that you probably just weren't even geared to deal with as a child, it became identity formation things where you started to base your identity on those things, as an adult, where it wasn't necessarily your true self.
The big thing is there's a lot of limited beliefs, Justin, that basically started to erupt. And it's basically only when I've got older that I started to realize there's a lot of limiting beliefs that basically kept me back. So there was a poverty mindset, and I always wanted to. I've always pushed into a lot of stuff. I'm an all out or nothing kind of person. So there's a poverty mindset that erupted inside of me regarding a lot of stuff, and it's not just materialistic stuff. It was the fact that that you've got this lie that's being built up inside of you that you are not enough. In other words, you have this capacity to love other people and to love God, but when it comes to yourself and looking yourself in the mirror, there was kind of the love that you have for yourself was more like an egotistical kind of love. So if you've got this titles and this all the successes that you first have to pack out, and then you present it to yourself and say, well, I'm not bad, I'm a good person, I've achieved this and I've achieved that and I've achieved that. And that's kind of how it became with people, and how it became with God as well. So every time when I meet up with people, I had to basically put myself out there and show them, listen, this is all I've got, this is my successes, so validate me, please. And that's kind of my relationship that I had with God as well. Well, you see that I've been doing all this work for you, and I've been involved in this, and I've done this, and I've done that. When in fact, all that really matters is not the stuff that you put on the table and the badges that you wear and the titles and the medallions that you've got around your neck. Those stuff does not validate when it comes to your identity. And that's something that I needed to realize at a very late stage in my life, that I am enough, that what I do is not a true reflection of who I really am, that what I do is not the measuring stick for my validity in life and being enough. The moment that mindset can basically sink in, it starts to eliminate a lot of limiting beliefs. And it's not all at once. It's stuff that basically happens during your time and during your life. And one of the stuff that basically how I dealt with a lot of the negativity in my life was I leaned into positive stuff, but I've also leaned into negative stuff. And if you understand the whole biological thing regarding the human mind, dopamine, the reward system, and going through that kind of stuff and just feeling worthy, I dabbled into a lot of stuff. I've been introduced to pornography at a very, very young age, and basically it was one of the stuff that kept me running when I felt low. That was the stuff that I tend to run to, just to get that dopamine lifted up and just to feel that worthiness, that rawness, basically just being uplifted. But as I grew older, I started, I think from a very young age, when I got exposed the very first time, it was this arousing feelings. And anybody that's ever dabbled with pornography knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's this shock, this awe, and then it's that maybe I should just explore a little bit more, and then it becomes attractive, and then it becomes more and more and more. And there's a whole science, obviously, regarding that, and that's a whole talk for another day. But it was something that really caught my attention when it came to addiction. Some people fall into alcohol or drugs or whatever, or gambling, but porn addiction was the thing that was my crutch at that time. It was the one thing that basically just whenever I wanted to validate myself as a man, because that was the manly thing to do. Men watch porn kind of thing. So for me, a lot of time, because my strongest authoritative figure in my life was my mom. And there was in that time a very long basically process where I knew my identity as a man, but there was a lot of stuff that's been thrown to me where because of the art and the music that I'm into, the question was raised whether I was into men and being homosexual and all that kind of stuff, which I never was. I always had a love for women. I've never, just to put it out there and just make it clear. But so pornography was one of the stuff that basically gave me the anchor in the stuff that I watched was women. So it kind of like earthed me in the sense that, listen, I'm a man. I'm a man. So that's why I watch manly stuff. But that stuff is so toxic and so addictive that it basically caught me in that trap for over 20 years, where I daily struggled with that and trying to let it go. I had self-help books, I've had accountability partners, all that kind of stuff. But there's an inner thing that needs to happen. Realizing and getting that true identity of being enough, that was the pivotal thing for me, that basically broke the thing for me. And I know every person is different, and I know every person has a different way of getting out of that. And there's wonderful programs out there. But the thing that worked for me was finding my true identity. And the moment when I found my true identity, that stuff started to break for me. I've suffered with depression for over 12 years. I was on very strong medication. I was very badly into that stuff. And a lot of that stuff is rooted into bad identity. And again, I don't want to diss that and put that out as the norm and saying, you know what, you're depressed because you don't know who you are and you don't have an identity. I do honestly understand and acknowledge the medical field as well. There is mental illnesses out there, but I'm talking about Roché. I've been struggling for 12 years with depression, but my depression was rooted in not loving myself, not acknowledging that I am enough, and not finding my true identity. So the moment that false identity, that ego that I wanted to try and uphold, when that thing broke, everything in my life started changing. And it's like Jim Carrey said in that one thing. It says your depression is kind of like the avatar that you've created, trying to tell your body, listen, I'm tired of keeping up with this thing that you've created. I'm tired of this false identity that you've created. And that's kind of the thing with me. I've suffered with depression for over 12 years. And the reason for that was I was trying to uphold an identity that I was not supposed to uphold. There was this differentiation that needed to start happen, that even if I don't have a microphone and I don't have a guitar in front of me and I'm not leading a music team, that I am enough, and that stuff does not define my identity and does not define my worth. So yeah.
Wow, there's so much in there. And I'm loving where this is going. I think what you're also kind of bringing to light here is that I think there's going to be a couple of more shows where I'm going to have you on, specifically with some of the issues you mentioned. I mean, depression being one of them. It's such a thing. Like what you say, it's absolutely a medical a medical side to it, and I think there's a lot of people that do need that. But I also think there's a lot of people, specifically the last few years, where it's become too easy to get put on medication. It's become too easy with all the stuff that happens to say you have this, and like you say, there's actually other issues that cause it. A very good example is in one of our organizations, we were running this coaching program called the 30-day superhero challenge, which was about like a 30-day online experience. You did it yourself. I mean, to liberate yourself out of the darkness that holds you back, and to discover your gifting and find your purpose in life and a lot of things. And on the very first day, on the very first videos, I made this video and I explained this concept about, so many people struggle with addictions. I mean, you spoke about pornography and alcoholism, and there's drugs, and there's people who struggle with depression and all of these things. But a lot of it, and I'm not saying, again, this is not for all the time, but I'm saying majority of the time, these things are actually all just effects. And a lot of the time, people treat effects, they treat symptoms, but they don't treat the cause. It's like you have a flu or something. I don't know, these days people are so worried about flu or whatever, but so it's like you just go get a pill that stops your nose from running, but that doesn't treat the actual problem that's causing the running nose, and so it just persists and persists. And so I think we're going to have a few more shows, talking about those things. I think the one about, just for men, and, things like pornography and alcoholism, and, even just, being stuck in front of the TV, or spending your whole day in a workshop in your garage building things, that can also be addictive things, because, I'm reading this awesome book right now talking about, unleashing the soul of man. And, on an intrinsic level, a man wants to be dangerous. He wants to be adventurous. He wants to, like you say, there's an inner desire within each and every person that you want to, within each and every man, should I say, that you want to be adventurous and daring. And I'm just talking about men specifically now, but we kind of live in a culture and a society where it's completely, constantly being attacked, where to think of a man being dangerous and to think of him being this rugged, and it's almost sort of like a taboo now, because you need to be kind and politically correct and soft and those type of things. And I think that's where a lot of this comes in. And then you get men that go into these things where it makes them feel like a man, as you say, and it's that feeling actually that they want. It's not the addiction that they want. It's not that the end result that they want, because there's always shame and guilt afterwards, but they want that moment of adrenaline where they feel like a man. And I think that's definitely something we can talk about in the future, because that's where you need to be getting out there and hiking and playing sport and doing all sorts of things. So we'll get into there. But you ended up there talking about when all this changed for you, when you found your identity. And what I want to ask you a little bit later on is, what are some of the myths and some of the misconceptions about identity and all of that. But first, I want to ask you, what is identity to you? If you have to just start it off by summing up, you and I have been speaking a lot about identity, in our own groups over the last few months. But just for the viewers out there, on the starting point, what is your take on finding identity in life? What does that mean?
Okay. So for me, it was a turning point that basically happened was when I've got a chair in my house. Just at the entrance of my house, there's one chair. Basically, when a person walks in there, you will think it's just an ornament, but for me, it's my connection place with myself and with God. So first of all, off the bat, God is everything to me. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I would have been. And definitely lost. But what happened is that one morning when I sat there and I was just basically connecting with him, and what happened is that in that moment, he said to me, it's impossible for you to truly accept my love for you. And he said to me, it's not possible for you to, at the moment, to embrace the full value of your wife and your children and your friends and the people that appreciate you. You're not able to do that. And I'm like, yes, that's very negative. Why? And he said to me, the one big thing that basically just started the whole process. And he said to me, well, you don't have the capacity inside of you at the moment to love yourself. And I know that there's a big thing out there, basically people pronouncing the whole time, yeah, you need to love yourself and self-love tactics and all that kind of stuff. But what I want to lean onto is that for me, identity is not loving your ego. It's not loving your personality or your character. It's embracing your bad and good qualities, or your weaknesses as well as your strengths as a whole. Because I do understand now where in the past I wanted to be like everything. So I have a very big general knowledge of a lot of stuff in life. And I felt like, you know what, I need to be strong at admin as well as casting vision. But I do realize today that I'm not strong, say, for instance, in admin. So I have to have people around me that's got that kind of strength, that basically I can tap into their strengths where I'm weak, and they tap into my strengths where they are weak. So I started to realize, by loving who I truly was, it was the starting point for me in finding my true identity. And I got the question, because obviously I'm a believer, I've got the question that was being raised to me, and that's the number one question I believe in life. The prodigal son, when he went out, and I don't want to go into the whole story, so if you don't know it, just go into the Gospels and you'll find, go and search Google or whatever, the prodigal son, and just go and check out the story. It's quite amazing. What happens, what's actually so true to me in the story is that he lost basically his identity. He wanted to go and find it out there outside of the house of the Father. And there's a moment in time when he was basically sitting in the pigsty, and the word there in the Greek says that he came to himself. He realized who he truly was, and he knew that he needed to go back. And that's basically the question that comes to every one of us. There's a lot of questions being thrown out there, and Jesus comes to his disciples and he says the following. He says, okay, you just came back from a very evil place or a very evil city. Who do the people there say I am? And that's the question that's being asked to us today. That was the question that's been asked to me. I mean, I've been in ministry for 23 years plus. So I've been doing ministry for a very long time. I started to become a believer at a very young age, but I've been doing ministry for a very, very long time. And the question comes up, who do you say I am? And at that moment, that's the very same thing with you. The moment that you hear that question, who do you say Jesus is? Or who do you say he is? Then you can start to recite a lot of stuff saying, you know what, I've heard Stephen Furtick says this, or I've heard T.D. Jakes says this, or I've read about it here, and I've read here, this is who he is. And then he asked the question to his disciples, okay, but I've heard what you said about what the people say I am in the city, but who do you say I am? And that is where the whole thing basically starts. Who do you say he is? And what he is to you is where the foundation and the forming of your identity is. Let me bring it back to a very practical example. If I've got an LG TV in my house, I won't go to a mechanic at Toyota and ask him, listen, can you give me any advice on my TV? My TV is broken. Or let's make it more realistic. I won't take my TV to an electrician. The electrician might know something about the product of fixing stuff, but he won't know exactly how to fix that model because he's not the manufacturing or the creator of that product. And that's a lot of times that what we do. We struggle with stuff, and then we go out to a person that might know something about this problem or this situation. And especially when we go out and finding our true identity, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, and there's a lot of stuff that you can watch, and even this video, connecting and finding your true identity. But if you don't go to the creator, the one that manufactured who you really are, if you don't go there, you'll never actually find your true identity. So what happened was that he showed me this picture of loving myself, and I was like, okay. So the way that I started to connect and started to realize who I really was was spending time. And if you're a one of those conservative orthodox kind of believers, crucify me if you want to, but I do believe in meditation, obviously not the hala, but I do believe in meditation and practicing silence. And in that moments of silence, the Creator actually started showing me that, you know what, in order to love the Creator, you first need to love yourself. It's like me telling, you know what, I've got this amazing artist that I start to rave about, but in order for you to believe, you need to see that artist in action. So spending time with him and connecting with him, and in that moment realizing that who I am, not the stuff that I do, not the stuff that I achieve, not the stuff that I have, the materialism, all the words that people say about me can ever validate who I really am. The only validation comes from hearing what he says about you and knowing that you're enough. Just to bring it back to one of the stories in the gospel, that before Jesus even went and did any ministry, at the age of 30, before he did any ministry, before he went into that Jordan River and got baptized, and God opened up the heavens saying to him, "This is my beloved Son whom I love." He didn't preach. He didn't do any miracles. He didn't achieve anything. Nobody even knew about him. But the Father said, "I love him. And this is the one that I adore. And this is the one that I like, that I validate." So there was nothing that he did. And that's sometimes where we caught up in this trap. Sounds like an Elvis Presley song, "I'm caught in a trap and I can't get out." And that's sometimes where we are. We get caught in a trap and we can't get out. Where we've got this belief that I must have this cell phone, I must have this house, I must drive this car, I must have this girlfriend, or I must have this partner, because then I'll be validated and people will look upon me and say, "Yeah, this guy has made it," or this girl has made it. And that's not true. Because if all that stuff falls, that's the brittle stuff that I've been talking about. That's sand. If you build your character and your identity on that stuff, it just falls.
It's almost like if you have, if you form your identity, you must always ask yourself, is it based on something that could possibly not be here tomorrow for some reason? It's very easy. Something can happen in the economy, a health problem can happen, then you got to ask yourself, do I really want to base my whole existence on that thing? Or do I want to base my existence on something that can never be affected by a worldly circumstance? And I just want to mention something. You spoke about meditation. I just want to clarify something here, and it's true what you say. There's a lot of misconception, specifically in let's call it your orthodox religious circles about it. And I think there's a lot of people who's waking up to it. But as you said, it's not necessarily in terms of traditionalistic practices, but it's just the ability to sit still in silence. And if you think you are perfect, and you've got everything sorted out on a spiritual level, I want to challenge you. Can you go sit for 20 minutes, just 20 minutes, in pure silence, not thinking, not saying anything, not praying, nothing, just being silent and listening? And then you see how you really struggle in that. And this is something, maybe we're going to talk about it as we go, Roché, that you brought to my understanding as we've been talking about all of this, is that if how you measure the amount that you've dealt with rejection in your life is how long you can sit in absolute silence and just listen. And whether it's your relationship with God, or maybe you're not on that level of belief yet, maybe it's just you're listening to that voice on the inside. Because no matter what your faith is, we all have a voice on the inside. I mean, if you think back to when you were a little child, and you didn't know anything about careers or spiritual life or whatever the case is, there was always this little voice on the inside, speaking greatness to you about what you want to be one day and what you want to do, and you want to conquer the world and be the knight in shining armor, whatever the case is. There's always this voice on the inside of us, and I think a lot of us miss it because we don't focus on what's coming out there. We want to get all the information and all of our stuff from the outside, and just that ability to sit and listen in that quiet moment And yes, for those who are, believers watching this out there, that is the moment where you actually have a two-way conversation with God, where it's not just, the whole time you speaking and talking and asking, but actually just listening, because it's a two-way street. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I think it's going on to the next point, which you kind of already, touched on, that we can maybe go a bit deeper in, is, one thing that you also say a lot, and it's so relevant, because, what is the first thing that, you go visit friends, or guys get together on the golf course or at each other's house for, a meal, and they meet each other for the first time, and what's the first thing that they always ask each other? What do you do? And it's this whole thing of comparing, okay, where do I fall in the pecking order? Am I so smart? Do I earn that much? Am I on the same level? But no one actually ever introduces themselves to someone, then asks them, who are you? And I think that's actually a much more important question nowadays to ask than what do you do? And so that actually ties me into the next thing that I want to speak about, and that is that, are there any myths or misconceptions about finding your identity or forming your identity, and as well as how that relates to relationships, that you can debunk? Because I think, like you said, there's a lot of other content and a lot of other teaching and so many books and stuff out there about finding your identity. But when it comes to practically living in that moment and what it really means to do it, what are some of the myths out there and that you can debunk?
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, it just leans back into that thing that we said. When it comes to identity, that everything starts there. Our biggest obstacle in knowing God is the fact that we don't even know ourselves. So we start wearing masks in front of people, in front of ourselves, in front of our partners, and even in front of God. And there's a false identity that we keep on creating over and over and over. And it leans actually back to the fact that in order to love God, or to even love anyone else, you need to love yourself. And again, I just want to reiterate and just say, it's not loving your ego. It's not loving your personality. It's embracing the fullness and the fact that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I've spoken to a guy the other day about that, and he says, yeah, the moment when I say that, I ask him, listen, who are you? And he starts to describe himself, and I said to him, no, that's not who you are. And I ask him the question again, who are you? And he starts to throw out his different things, what he does and what he's achieved. And I said to him, you know what, that's not really that's not the stuff that I'm asking you about. I'm not talking about your accolades. I'm not talking about the stuff that you've achieved. I want to know, who do you say you are? Who are you really? And he started to become uncomfortable. But I wanted to get to the point where identity is so much rooted in the fact that, what do you believe about yourself? There's this one, we as human beings are three-part. We've body, soul, and spirit. And we understand kind of like the body thing and how we operate and body cravings and that kind of stuff. And all three of them are related in the sense that they are connected to one another. So they're not separate. But a lot of times, the reason why we as believers get stuck in the fact that we don't know who we really are is because we suppress one of the most important parts of that image of that three parts, and that's the soul. The way that the soul communicates to us, the language of our soul is emotions. And I've been one of those people that have even preached against that and said, you know what, don't trust your feelings and just throw out scriptures and beliefs and declarations and all that kind of stuff. But the big thing is that we are missing it completely if we do not listen to our emotions. To give you an example, I've struggled with a certain type of authoritative figure in my life, going back to that stepfather that I had at a very young age. He was very dictatorial, and the way that he came over. So it was a very big struggle for me dealing with that kind of personality or that kind of character. And so always as a believer, I started to quote scripture just to feel better about myself, and I will come against a spirit of fear and all that kind of stuff. When in fact, when I asked the question for the very first time, why am I feeling anxious when I meet this kind of personality or this kind of character? Why do I feel this? And the Holy Spirit just brought me back into a place when I was 6 years old, and I saw him in the kitchen screaming at my mom, um, putting his hand around her neck, choking her, and that moment stuck with me. And whenever I saw a character like that, and whenever I dealt with a character like that, that kind of anxiousness and that preposition started to come up and started rising up inside of me. So instead of dealing with fear, throwing out scriptures and basically throwing it out with all kinds of prayers and stuff, my soul was starting to communicate emotions towards me and actually screaming at me and saying, you know what, stop trying to mute me. Just listen to what I'm trying to tell you. And the moment that I dealt with that memory and I forgave him and moved on, it became so much easier dealing with that character and dealing with that kind of personality that today it doesn't offend me. It doesn't put me in a place where I feel numb or feel that I cannot speak openly. So a lot of times the reason why we can't form actually our true identity and try to latch on an ideal self or the person that we want to become is because we can't even acknowledge the true self. We can't acknowledge and say, you know what, I don't like this, or I do like this. But a lot of times society presses us into a thing where we are supposed to, let's say we watch TV programs nowadays, where a minority group is being pushed so hard that we must accept that this is the norm. But in my inner being, in my subconscious mind, I'm like, but I don't like this. And this is not okay for me. But society is pressing us so much into this sense that we are supposed to like this, and we're supposed to what do you call it, validate this and appreciate this and all that kind of stuff, but it's not true. So identity for me is acknowledging the stuff that we don't like and also the stuff that we do like. So say, for instance, there's this movie long time ago. So some of you will recognize this, some of you won't. But Julia Roberts played in this movie, Runaway Bride. She had numerous fiancés, and every one of them liked their eggs in a different way. So the one would like it scrambled, the one would like it sunny side up, etc. And then there's Richard Gere, this reporter that actually he made a story about her, saying that she's going to run again with this new fiance that she had. And while he was sitting next to her in this restaurant, she was ordering eggs, and he said, her fiance said, "No, I would like my eggs scrambled." And the waiter asked her, "How would you like it?" And she was like, almost like a confused, and she said, "No, I would like it scrambled as well." And Richard Gere said to her, "You actually don't know what you really like, do you?" And that's one of the things where the question is being asked. If people say certain stuff, and if people do certain stuff, how do you respond towards that? Are you just going with the mainstream? Are you just responding as everybody else is responding? Because that is leaning towards an egotistical identity and not knowing really who you are. And that's basically where the pressure comes in, when the true self of who you really are and the ideal self, if that distance becomes too far and you hang in the balance of keeping the tension between these two, that's where the pressure of life starts to really hit you. And that's where depression basically came in for me, because I never acknowledged the true self. I was just chasing the ideal self, and the tension between those two became so hard that it actually led up to one of my biggest failures in life that that basically just snapped this whole thing in order for me to find out who I really was.
Wow, that's so powerful. And I think just like what you're saying there, the ability to embrace your authentic self. I mean, this is the Life of Valor podcast, and what I'm trying to get out to people is the concept of valor, which is courage and bravery, and just embracing who you are and be willing to step out there and stand for what you believe in, regardless of what happens, because that is who you are. And your convictions, your motivations, the way you see life was given to you for a reason. And so to deny that is to deny your purpose, to deny the reason for your existence. And, like you're saying there, regardless of what is portrayed as the right thing to believe and do and say in mainstream, I think we sit with a society of so many weak people because people have the inability to disagree with each other now. It's like the moment someone says something you don't like, oh, I'm offended. And offense is such a low level of consciousness because no one actually gives offense. People take offense. And that comes out of, again, like you say, an identity that's not rooted. Because if someone says something and you disagree with it, you should just be mature enough to know, you know what, that's where they are. I'm here. I'm just going to, separate. But they have to go make a whole scene out of it because I think a lot of the time they're not sure themselves of who they are. And that is actually where all that, that behavior comes from. And so, I'm so glad you went here because it's actually leading to where I want to now start talking about young people who are growing up in this world and struggling with all of these issues. Because what I'm trying to get out here is you need to affirm who you are and what you believe in and what you stand for. What are your values? What are your morals? What are your principles? And be willing to stand out and speak out for that regardless of the lashback because just by the fact that you stand up and do something, automatically you liberate someone else to do the same. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever watched Coach Carter with Samuel L. Jackson. And in that movie, he's coaching this basketball team of guys in a really rough community. And at the end, they use this poem, which says, so let your light shine before men, because by doing so, you unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And so that's what really stands out for me, and that actually leads me into where I want to go now, Roché, is specifically for my generation of people out there. Some of the biggest issues, I think it's always been like this, but I mean nowadays specifically, there's so many issues with bullying going on. I heard stories yesterday, drug abuse and where that comes from, alcoholism, like you said, pornography, even self-hurting. There's a big issue with that at the moment. I had a lot of people in school who were dealing with that. There's so much depression, anxiety, peer pressure is a massive thing. So as I said, a lot of those things you can treat the symptoms, but I think treating the cause has a lot to do with identity, rather than anything else. So how would you say that the understanding of identity creates all of those issues and those habits and those things, both for the bully and for the victim behind that? And then how can a young person free themselves out of all of those destructive habits and beliefs or situations by embracing their true identity?
Okay. First of all, it says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that has never changed. It's still the same today. It will forever be till the day that we lay down our heads. The only person that does not believe that is us. Because if I say, for instance, just to answer your question, when we are being formed in the womb of our mother, even regardless of what the situation is, of how we got there, I was one of those children that was born out of wedlock. There are some children that basically don't even know their mothers or their fathers. They are in foster care. And there are people that have been born into very, very bad, poor situations. But I want to tell you, the outside exterior does not define who you are. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Nor our past or our future can define who we really are. This very moment that where we are now, this now moment, is basically the only definition of who we truly are. And the one thing that we are in this moment that doesn't change anything is that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. The things the moment that we get born, regardless of your age, say for instance, for me now, I'm 38 years old now. So for 38 years, there's been labels being put on me every single day. When people see me in shops or wherever, or when they see this video, they'll probably put a tag on us and say, you know what, yeah, they're this or they're that, or they'll say good things about us. But that's tags. And it's the tags that we look upon, and that's the stuff that we feel gives us definition. But the big thing is that, and it's true for believers as well. There's that, just coming back to the story of the guy when I asked him, who are you? And he says, no. And I said to him, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And he says, yes, in Christ. I says, no. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what it says. It doesn't say there, you are fearfully and wonderfully made in Christ. No, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Regardless of your parents, regardless of your upbringing, regardless of your circumstances, and I mean, I had one of the most horrific circumstances in my adolescence, but regardless of that, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Regardless of an abusive father or abusive mother or abusive peers or teachers, authoritative figures, doesn't matter what they scream at you, as long as you can have that core belief inside of you, knowing that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And the reason why so many of our teenagers in these days fall into all kinds of addiction and cutting themselves and being in depressive states is because we are bombarded with peer pressure at such a big level of telling us who we are supposed to be. And that's the big reason why we've got all this equality acts and all that kind of stuff, to kind of like just set the pace in a neutral place so that people can basically, so we throw out that stuff and saying, you know what, please don't say all of this stuff. We don't want to offend anybody. But to be true and honest to you, Justin, if we are secure in our identity, it doesn't matter what people throw at us. It doesn't matter what people scream at us. You know what the truth is, as long as you know your truth. But the big thing about our day and age is that we live with people that don't really know who they are, and they're trying to grasp at any truth basically being thrown out there outside. And the moment when I ask you, just leaning back into the story where Jesus said to Peter and asked him, listen, who do you say I am? He was standing in front of a cage where they did idol worship, where they would throw children into that cave, worshiping demonic gods. And he asked Peter, who do you say I am? And he says, you are the Son of God. And Jesus said at that moment, he said, you know what, upon that revelation, I will build my church. And upon that revelation, the gates of hell will not be able to prevail. So I want to say today, knowing who Christ is for you, the truth for you, having that identity for you, no kind of words or depression or addiction, whatever being thrown at you, or you must be this, or you must talk like that, or you must have this kind of identity, and this is who a true man is, and this is who a true woman is, does not matter what's being thrown at you. The gates of hell will not prevail, because your identity is securely rooted in who you're supposed to be. The reason why a lot of us are being offended today, and we can't open our mouth when we don't agree with stuff, is because we don't even truly know what we believe. So that's why we throw out offense the whole time, because in your inner self, your subconscious mind is not agreeing with stuff that is being said. So the moment that you basically react is you are reacting out of a place where you know something is wrong, but you don't really know what is wrong, and you don't even believe in your own voice. So you just kind of like hold back, and you don't want to say anything, because even though you feel offended, you also don't want to offend somebody else that don't even know what their truth is, because your voice is silent because of a lack of true identity. You're leaning towards a false identity, and that's the reason why you keep on copying and pasting and just copying someone else's stuff. And it's like, I've spoken to a guy yesterday, also saying to him, you know what? There's this one guy that I've heard basically giving a statement, and I said, you know what? I know the inner circle of that guy, and the way that he expressed that truth sounded like one of the people in his inner circle. So I was asking the question whether he was believing what he said out of his own mouth and whether it was his truth or whether he was just reflecting someone else's truth. Because you know what? We can scream creeds and we can scream beliefs and causes and all that kind of stuff. But if it's not true to you, it will not hold water.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so critical for the times we're living in. I mean, we all know what's going on in the world at the moment, and even just to put it out there for both sides of the spectrum, because there's a lot of conflicting parties on the whole issue. I'm not going to get into the details of it in this video, but whether, even if you're on the person on the mainstream and you believe academic textbooks and experts, and I understand a lot of that stuff is there, but again, like you're saying, is that truth for you, or are you just believing what someone else said who's funded by someone who needs a certain outcome and a result? Like, there's so much we can go into there, but at the end of the day, whether you want to be on that side or on that side, I don't care which side you're on. I'm not promoting any belief system, but I'm saying is go and make sure that your decisions, especially decisions that are going to affect you for the rest of your life, are based on a truth that you know for yourself for sure before that you go and do it. Because otherwise, any decision that you make is going to be a reaction decision, and reaction decisions are never good, because it's always based on fear or the missing out or worry or whatever the case is, and those are always the worst. And decision making is so important that you are rooted, first. Yes.
One of the stuff basically, when one of the coaches in life coaching that was giving me some advice says, you know what, the moment that you start speaking your voice, the moment that you're starting to swim upstream and you're not going with the mainstream, you will get haters. That's actually one of your barometers. That's one of the places where that's basically the thing that gives you an indication of how far you have come to opening up your true voice. And the thing is, and like she said to me, she said, you know what, that's people criticizing and giving offense and all that kind of stuff. That is a reflection not of who you are, it's a reflection of who they are.
One thing I also just quickly wanted to mention is, when you were speaking, I actually wanted to just go and look up the word for in that verse that says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Like the original meaning in the original language of fearfully, the word fearfully. And it literally means, awful, not awful, like being awe-inspired, or inspired reverence or fear, or being frightened or anxious about something. And, it hits me like, if you are your true self, you are such a powerful individual in who you are already created to be, that people should actually fear and respect you because of, and if you start to see people with that lens as well, you start to treat people completely differently, because you never know who you're sitting next to. I always have a thing like, treat the person next to you very well, because maybe in a year from now, they're a multi-millionaire and you were rude to them today, and and then they can't help you out. But, one of, like you said, the barometer of how do you measure you really your true self is that, and I like to measure what we do with this, is that if someone interacts with me or our products or our services, either two things need to happen. They either need to be highly offended, and they're probably going to swear at us and say we a bunch of we're smoking something, and they're going to go, and that's fine. Then we're not a match for each other, and that's perfect, because with so many billions of people on the planet, you're never going to be a match for everyone. You need to find your people that you match with. And the other thing is, on the other side of the coin, is they need to be massively transformed. So that either they need to be highly offended, or they need to be massively transformed in some way to improve in their life. And
great meme the other day that says, if you want to be popular, go sell ice cream. And that's not what we do on this talk show.
Yeah, well, even nowadays you might get people offended from that, because it comes from animals, and there's a whole talk about that as well. But anyway, Roché, I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction now, because something else that you and I have been speaking about, and you've been speaking about in your talks and in groups you've been working with, and but it's so closely related to identity and embracing your identity that we can't leave it out of this discussion. And that is that is authenticity and vulnerability. How important is being vulnerable and accountable, and what has that done for you in order to bring freedom in your own personal life?
So vulnerability, accountability, responsibility, and intentionality plays a very, very big role in my life today. One of the big reasons for that is that if you don't have that in your relationships towards people, towards the people that walks and does life with you, if you don't have those people around you, you'll fall apart. And let's face it, all of us have failed in life. And I want to just give you this confirmation today and just want to assure you today that failure is not a person, it's only an event. So if you failed in life, it does not define who you are. It's just the moment. And a lot of times we don't realize it, but failure is a lot of times it's gifts that life is giving us because we are not perfect. There is times that we fall in a situation or where we fail and we learn out of it. So it's one of the statements that I make that I've borrowed. It says, I never lose. I either win or I learn. Because we don't lose in life. We learn. We learn or we win. And one of the big things in my life where accountability, responsibility, and intentionality started to form place is because I didn't have that around me and I thought I did. And it basically, the fact that I didn't have that in my life led up to one of my biggest failures in life. So I know that this being accountable, responsible, and intentional with people is one of the biggest saving graces. It's one of the anchors in lives that keeps you. With Justin on this talk show as well, he's one of my inner circle partners. We do life together. We share and we are accountable to one another. And we don't just share the stuff, the airy-fairy stuff. We share the big stuff. We share the stuff that's right here, that hits, the stuff that you think but you never talk about. And how liberating that is. I mean, if you're watching this today, you would know there is some dark stuff that you ponder about, that you think about. You might even be thinking about suicide like I did a few months ago, where I had my inner circle that was actually saving me out of the grip of self-destruction, of committing suicide, where I could lean into the uncomfortable and being vulnerable. And that's one of the biggest things that is keeping us away from connecting with people and uniting with people, is not being vulnerable. Vulnerability is uncomfortable. It's not something that's comfortable. Otherwise, all of us would have done it. If I can give you an example, we threw out a challenge into a group saying, you know what, let's do these life habits. That we pray, we meditate, we have self-development, we've got a workout, and we connect with our audience. And we threw it out there, and the very first week, there was a lot of people that celebrated and says, yeah, I can achieve this, and I can do this, and all that kind of stuff. And as life progressed, the people started to become more silent. They didn't talk about it. They didn't give reflection about it. Even if you ask the question, say, hey guys, how are you doing with the 5 life habits? There was a lot of quietness regarding that, because we like to talk about our victories. We like to talk about the successes of life. We like to talk about how we achieved it. I don't know if you've seen that meme where the guy stands on the podium and the people down under says, oh, that looks so easy and it was so amazing. But when you look at the other side of the picture, it shows glasses and it shows thorns and all that kind of stuff. And the guy's feet is actually bleeding. Having that kind of success in life and being successful comes with a very, very big price of vulnerability. Not all of us, well, let's just say this, none of us are successful in life and just having it easy and haven't fallen down and haven't failed and haven't had our heads being bashed in the ground. And the people, the critics that actually matter in your life is the ones that is doing life with you. It's not the people that's sitting in the podium and screaming at you and saying, yeah, you should do this, or you should talk like that, or you should act like this. That's not the people's opinions that are supposed to matter in your life. The people's whose opinions are supposed to matter in your life is the ones that is walking and doing life with you. That's the people whose opinion is mattering. So that's your inner circle. So vulnerability is that leaning into the uncomfortable and saying, you know what, buddy, I don't know if you know this, but I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with pornography, or I'm struggling with suicidal thoughts. I'm struggling just to keep my head around this. And that's leaning into the vulnerability. And I'm not saying being vulnerable to every single person you come across, because there's some people that will not be able to take that vulnerability and that cannot handle that kind of vulnerability. There's a myth that says the truth will set you free. It's not all truth. Your truth might not set someone free. Your truth might offend a person in such a way that it causes bondage. So being vulnerable and speaking your truth is in a place of an inner circle. It's a place of protection. It's a place of people that when you bleed out and your intestines and everything lies on the ground, it's not those people are not the people that will start kicking you and pushing you down in the ground and saying to you, why did you not do that? You know, you should have done this. Why didn't you say this? Why didn't you act that way? No. Those people in your inner circle will say, you know what, regardless of what you did, regardless of what you said, regardless of how you did it, we are here to pick you up. Come on. I want to pull you up. And in a place of shame, let's be real and honest with one another. When you come to a place of failure, the moment that you failed, one of the big thing is, and one of the biggest causes of us not going forward and connecting with our true identity is because we don't love ourselves. And the reason we don't love ourselves is because we are caught up in a place of shame, condemnation, rejection, and self-condemnation. And we project that onto ourselves. And that's when it says, as a man think he is. So if you keep on projecting back to your failures and you just concentrate on that, and you don't have that inner circle in your life that says, and that can call out the BS in your life and say, you know what you believe about yourself at this moment is not true. What you are saying about yourself at this very moment is not true. You know what? We will affirm you. Let us tell you who you really are. And they start to pull you up and they start to get you out of that junk. Because when we fail, we fall into shame. The only way that you can dismantle shame, and this is a big struggle for all of us. The moment that we start falling into shame because of failure, we want to hide it. We don't want to talk about it. But I want to tell you something today. The moment that you hide your failure because of shame, you're giving it more power. The only way that you can deal with shame, self-condemnation, and self-rejection is putting yourself out there and saying, you know what? I failed miserably. I failed miserably. And to bring you back to the statement that I said, failure is an event, it's not a person. I want you to just to really grasp that failure is not the thing that's supposed to define you. It's your message. That failure is mess. But you get through that and it becomes your message. It becomes your biggest value. It becomes your biggest attribute. I want you to know today that life happens for you. It doesn't happen to you. We get so sucked into this that the moment that we fail, we say, oh, why did this happen to me? No. Failure is a gift. Problems is a gift in life in order to excel you to your destiny. If there's problems that comes, if you go through life and you've been dealt a very, very harsh card in life and you've been dealt a very bad deck of cards in life, you know what? You play what's in front of you because it's happening for you. It's not happening to you. Today, I can speak to a lot of people going through addiction because I've went through addiction. And it's not just pornography. It's social media addiction. It's being addicted to approval of people. It's a lot of other stuff as well. I can speak to people about coming through an abusive house. I can speak to people about building a false identity and how to find your identity. There's a lot of stuff that I can talk about today, and I've got the power to talk about it because I've got the wisdom to talk about it, because it's not something that I've read on a tablet. It's not something that I've read in a book. It's stuff that I've went through. So if you go through a place where you are suffering with peer pressure or group pressure that's pushing you into different places or different stuff, and even society and the social media and mainstream pulling you in different sides and saying stuff about you that you're really not, and growing up in a house with disadvantages, don't say, why is this happening to me? It's happening for you, because there's a time and a day when it's going to come where you are not. I just want to affirm you with this. You're not the only person in life that's going through what you're going through right now. There's millions of people that's actually went through this. But you can decide whether it's going to become your excuse or your reason to excel. You can decide whether this thing is going to break you or this thing is going to make you. If you're in the corner, you're either going to fight or you're going to lay down. And I'm the kind of person that pushes forward. I mean, there's a lot of times that I've struggled inwardly in my mind, but that's where I have my inner circle where I'm accountable towards them, I'm responsible towards them, and I'm intentional towards them regarding my vulnerability. I will tell them, listen, guys, today is not a good day. I'm frustrated. I've got stuff that is bugging me. I've got stuff that is really breaking my mind at the moment. But I'm being vulnerable. I'm putting myself out there, because listening to your own voice sometimes gives you the answers that's already being formed inside of you. You already have all the answers that you are really struggling with. You have it, yeah. So the moment that you can lean towards that, and I want you to really go out there and find that person, even if it's just 3. Just find 3 people that you can secure around you that you can be accountable towards. And what is accountability for you? Accountability is being that open to that person. You say to them, you know what? I do life with you. I don't hold anything back. There's nothing that I cover up. I'm being real towards you. Being responsible says, you know what? I'm taking responsibility for your life. It's like me as a father with my 2 daughters. I'm responsible for them. I cover my whole life. My whole being is covering them and doing life with them and teaching them and going forward and helping them when they fall, to pick them back up. I'm giving my life for them. I'm responsible for them. Do you have a person like that in your life? Because that's a big thing. If you don't have people that you can be responsible to or is responsible for you, then you're really going to struggle. And being intentional. I don't do the whole thing of, hello, how are you? No, I'm good. Good, thank you. No, I've asked a question intentionally, and that's what I do with my wife. I will grab her by the shoulders and I will look her into the eyes and I will tell her, you know what? I love you. How was your day? Being intentional with a person and just locking eyes with them and asking them, how are you doing? And I've got this, Justin, I've got this thing that, I've discussed this with you as well, where I would sit with someone and I would ask him, how are you doing? And they would say, no, I'm blessed, not stressed. And you know what? Life is good and all that kind of stuff. And I'll ask the question again, how are you? And they'll say, no, I'm well. I'm good. I'm doing good. And then I will show them a picture of a guy, a drawing, a sketch of a person. And I just want to get that quickly. I just want to throw that out there. Just want to put that there, that they can see this.
So while you're looking for that, I'll add a little thing onto what you were saying about your mess becoming your message. There's also in a lot of the things we train, and my mentor and business partner says this, just phrase it differently. There is authority in your wounds. And that's why you can talk about a lot of things, because it's not you have read it or studied it, you've lived it. And for a lot of the viewers watching this, there's in your life automatically so much that you have had to overcome on a personal level. And just because you've gone through it and you've overcome that, you have a solution for someone else who's about to go through that in their own life or is going through it. Yes, Roché, you want to show something?
And just to latch on to what you say now, people don't want to know your successes today. They want to know, how are you dealing with it right now? People want to know, how are you going through this right now? And just going back to the challenge that I said, is people don't want to talk about their failures. They don't want to talk of how I'm not able to maintain these 5 life habits, or how I'm not able to maintain a good relationship, or whatever the case may be. But the biggest success story is when you say, for instance, go out, and there's a lot of people that does this, go out and say, you know what, let's do a 30-day diet challenge, or this 28-day diet challenge. We talk about it in the beginning because week 1 and week 2, everything goes well. But when the wheel starts falling off and life happens to us, or happens for us, I'm just contradicting my own words there, but when life happens for you, then we don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about the failing moments. But that's exactly when you need to open your mouth and start talking, because there are people that's out there that's struggling with exactly what you're going through, and they want your answers. Okay, so to go back to what I said, when I ask a person, how are you doing? And normally it takes about 3 times when the person will really open up. And I would say, how are you doing? The person would say, no, blessed, not stressed, and whatever. And then I'll ask again, and he'll say, you know what? No, I'm well. There's this and this and this. And I will ask them, listen, is this how you're doing? So we've got a smile on our face, but we've got this kind of loneliness inside our heads. And listen, loneliness has got nothing to do with the amount of people that's surrounding you. Loneliness has got everything to do with what's in your mind. You can have a lot of people around you, but if you never express the loneliness that's going on here, you'll be a very lonesome person. But anyways, I hope that helped.
Wow, there was so much golden nuggets in there. If I can just recommend that everyone who is watching or is watching this, go and write all of that down somewhere and make notes, because if you understand this and apply it, it will change your life so much. I mean, I can just quickly say out of my own life, if you understand my upbringing and my backstory and stuff, a lot of the identity that was put on me or that I was living with was, perfectionism, like, or let's just say, excelling and not having faults, and making sure that if you got 79 and not 80% on a test, why, that type of, and always striving to do better and always striving to achieve, and I think it also just comes out of, I just have a natural desire to succeed, and if I don't give 110%, then I actually almost feel, okay, but why didn't I do that? And so there's a lot of things in life where I've had failures, I've had stuff I've struggled with, and a lot of things, and it's always because of that I've that lifestyle and that personality that I've tried to create, that I've never opened up about certain things, and things that I was ashamed of. And I've come to people like you and our mutual friend and people that I know in my circles, and just said, you know what, I dealt with this was my issue, and I know, just opening up about that stuff and just being completely open and real for the first time. And it's just like, it's almost like this weight of like the Titanic comes off of your shoulders, and you start to feel like you're floating around. And does that change the issue? No, but it loses its power over you. But as you said, I think the most critical, important thing about what you're saying is that you need to make sure that accountability and that vulnerability and that sharing of your innermost self is in the right group of people. There's a lot of things that, for instance, you've been saying things, on this video and it's on a public platform, but there's authority that you have in it. You've overcome it. There's a certain level that you've dealt with it. But, a lot of things on a personal level, you don't want to just be telling everyone that, because there's a lot of immature people who's either going to go and, spread rumors and go, and that's the general fear that a lot of people have when it comes to this. And so that's why I just want to reiterate what you're saying about, it must be literally less people than what you can count on your one hand, is that inner group of people that you need. Divine strategic relationships, we like to call it. People that's in your life for a reason. They are fundamentally integrated into your life as a relationship. They have the same morals and principles and values as you. They're willing to share their own pain and their issues with you, because once that happens, then you have a mutual trust with each other. It's not just a one-way street. And that's where what you're saying is so important, doing life together. And if you really can't find anybody like that, depending on your situation, then you need to make sure you can get yourself to a coach or a mentor figure who's a few generations older than you, with the maturity that you can just go and open and be safe around, until you can find some. But it's always good to find people who are walking that road of life with you. Roché, one thing that you also spoke about there, you've been mentioning a few times, and you're welcome to say if you don't want to talk about it, but I know that you will talk about it because it is being vulnerable and authentic and sharing it. But you have been mentioning this a few times throughout this interview. But I want to ask this because, like you saying, people don't want to hear about your success. They want to hear about what you're going through and your failures and things, because that's ultimately what they're going through, and that's what people learn from. And so on my interviews, I don't want to just ask people what's your biggest memory or success or things, because I think every day that's improving. I want to ask people, what is your biggest failure, as I said, you've been mentioning that a few times. If you're willing to share on it, what did you learn out of that, and how did you overcome that? And the reason I'm asking the how is this: so that if there is anybody who's going through that, how can they overcome that?
Okay, so Justin, there's a lot of I think we have lots of failures, and then it's if our failures can be basically like a trophy cabinet, there's this one, the UEFA Champions League failure that we've had, and that's so I've had many stuff. I failed friends, I failed people in ministry, I failed people around me, I failed my family and all that kind of stuff. I failed myself in a lot of senses, but I think that there's one specific failure that stood out for me that changed a lot of stuff in my life. And let's face it, failures comes into different seasons into our life that changes the course and changes our seasons. But then there's this one, and for some people it's a lot, but there's this one pivotal event that happens. And you know why I'm saying it as an event, because failure is an event. It's not a person, but anyways. So there's this one certain event that happens in your life that changes the complete direction. It can change your job situation. It can change your relationships. It can change everything. It's basically you come to a T-junction and it's either left or right. That's the kind of failure. So I know that our viewers have had that kind of failures in their life as well. And if you didn't have that kind of failure, I'm not saying it's going to come, but it's going to come. Kind of thing. So yeah, just saying. So the biggest failure in my life, and that's one that I really, just out of different perspectives, I regret, but I also don't regret, because there's a lot of positive qualities that came out of it, and the positive qualities outweighs the negativity in such a big way that I actually, I'm thankful that it happened for me. So yeah, I broke the heart of the person that I love, honestly, the most. It's the person that I call my soulmate. It's the person that I do life with for the last 17 years. And I've broken her heart a few years ago by cheating on her. And that was my biggest failure in life. But that situation completely just changed everything, and in my sense, in a very good way. Because me and my wife, we were starting to do life apart. We were doing things, started to become familiarized with one another. And I honestly think that's one of the biggest downfalls of us as human beings. We become so familiar with beautiful things and we lose our wonder. It's like you go on to holiday for the very first time. Let's say a lot of us have not. I'm just going to take something very practical to relate to every one of us. Every one of us have some time in our life visited the sea. We've been on a beach, and there's some people that's watching this that may not have been on a beach before. But the very first time that you put your feet on the sand, it's that awness that strikes you, the bigness of this water ocean. And when I was a little child, I thought it was one big swimming pool. So I was awestruck wonder with what I saw there. But visiting that place every now and again the wonder started to fall off. It was just a beach. It was just the sea. And that's sometimes what happens in life. Well, not sometimes. That happens to a lot of stuff in life, that we lose our wonder. We lose our wonder when we got saved. We lose our wonder the first time when we got married. And years just progress, and we just start to become familiarized with the stuff around us. And because the thing that led up to my biggest failure was the fact that I was connecting so many stuff around my identity that I didn't truly know who I was. And I was starting to bleed all over my relationships. I was starting to bleed all over stuff. I was actually at a very, very bad place mentally in my life, where I was, I actually, like I said to my wife numerous times, my cheating, and I know a lot of people out there will maybe disagree with me, because when I put it out there, and I've spoken about it so many times with people, They'll say, you know what? No, cheating is a two-way part. And I do believe that because I've dealt with relationships on a very big scale, especially with my truth. And I will say, you know what? It is true, but in my sense, it wasn't. So it was my wife didn't contribute to anything of that. It was because I was at a place that it doesn't matter who it was that I've cheated with. I was at a very bad space in my life. I was at a very self-destructive place where I needed to come to a place where that tension between my true self and my false self, that needed to snap so that I can come to the realization of who I really was. And the moment that started to happen, my marriage healed. I started healing. The relationships around me started to heal. And the toxicity of people that I have surrounded myself with for so many years had actually been exposed. And that season completely changed for me. So for me, in a very big sense, I realized that with my identity being rooted around my singing and being an artist and all that kind of stuff, and even being a minister, that is not the true self of who I was. And I needed to be okay with the fact that if I never take up a mic and never take up a guitar again, that I would know that I'm enough. And today I'm actually at a place where I am so secure in the platform that I've got now. I've started a new business. I've been more involved in ministry than ever before. I'm actually being part of an organization and a ministry team that I have been I've been desiring that for basically as long as I've been in ministry, and that's being part of broken people. I've always said, you know what, I'm not called for believers. I'm called for people that don't have their lives together. I'm called for people who believers will call sinners. I'm called for those kind of people. And I'm now being more involved in a place where I can celebrate the successes of being part of broken people and being part of people that does not have everything together. And I thank God for that, because it makes the pressure of the pressure that's on my shoulder, it lifts that up, that off, because I don't have to be the guru or the guy that's got all the answers. And this is me just being vulnerable here, that I'm now dealing with people that's in the human trafficking arena, and people that's really, really, really broken, and that really needs God and really needs a person or people that can help and that can be part of that. And I'm being part of that now, and it's such a liberating feeling, being part of people's lives, being vulnerable, have this kind of real accountability and responsibility and intentionality in your life. That what happened for me is actually the biggest gift that God could have given me. And I know there's a lot of believers out there that would disagree with me, but I'm saying this is my truth. What happened for me is that today I've got a successful marriage, I've got a better relationship with my children, and I'm at a better place with myself. I can actually look at the person in the mirror and be thankful that God spared my life and given me another opportunity with the best people in my life.
Wow, what an awesome story. And I think it's almost a saying that I actually learned from you, is that a lot of people might crucify you and say, that's the wrong way of looking at it, but the only difference is that's a type of sin that's visible. Maybe theirs is just invisible, but they've got exactly the same amount. And all of us have that. So the quicker you're willing just to embrace someone for who they are. I mean, if you look at the story of Jesus, he spent majority of his time away with broken people, with people who wouldn't even be allowed into the temple. And the people, like, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? But that's where we need to be, because and that's the thing we've seen in our coaching groups and our products and the things we've done. We are much more willing to work with a broken person who swears and is, this rough type of personality, or is, but they just themselves, they're willing to say, listen, I thought that was rubbish, or I did it. They just themselves, rather than this person who comes and they're like, hello, this is me, and and they've got like this perfect, they do their introduction video just to introduce, and then they've got like this perfect resume, and then 2 weeks down the line, then they're on their doing their debriefs, and they're like crying, and oh, it was like this, because eventually that mask gets broken off. But like you say, just to embrace those things that happen and accept yourself for who you are and forgive yourself. I think that's such a major thing, to be able to forgive yourself, not just other people, and use that as the foundation to build upon. So Roché, I want to thank you for that story and for being so open and vulnerable. That I think that there's so much in there that everyone watching can learn from and listening. But last question. I know it's quite a beefy interview, but it's really, there's so much in here that people need to hear, especially nowadays. So the last one, and that is for the viewers watching, and specifically, people my age watching this, who are in their 20s. If you were starting over in your 20s again, if you could take yourself back and just rewind, you would still be the person who you are today, but you could start again in your early 20s. What would you do differently? How would you live life differently? What would you have not done? What would you have continued to do? Just for the people who are at that stage of their lives now, what can they learn from someone who's walked a bit of a longer road and dealt with all of these issues in life?
All right, Justin, just to be clear, I will go back into time, but honestly, if I could change anything, I think in my biggest failing moment, I would have changed that, because I would never have thought that I would have hurt the one person that I love the most so much. That's the only thing that I would have changed. But apart from that, I would change nothing, because the person that I am today is because of all the stuff that did happen. And I honestly I wish I would have discovered my true identity years ago and realized years ago that I was enough. I think there would have been a lot of stuff that would have been different. So the stuff that going back in my 20s, I think forgiving yourself easier, because I think that was the hardest thing. I could always forgive people very easily, but the person that was the most difficult to forgive was myself. So forgiving myself more and allowing myself to make more mistakes, because of the fact that I didn't have my identity rooted. I was completely focused on perfectionism. I couldn't do any having any faults was such a bad thing for me. I would crucify myself about everything. I would hit myself with everything. It was like, why did you say that? Or why did you do that? And you're such a bad person, or you're such a this, or you're such a that. And that's the inner battle that I fought in my mind. People didn't know that, but that was the inner battle that I fought. I usually said, you know what? If I would never have been friends with myself if my thought or the person that I'm in my mind, if that would have been a physical person, I probably would have hit that person, because the person that was in my mind in the 20s was a complete bully. He bullied me the whole time. So when it came back to that challenge that we did with you guys, let the darkness confront you. When I saw the person that I saw yelling at me the whole time, all kinds of accusations and speaking ill about me, I thought maybe like this was like an authoritative figure in my life. But when I looked up, I was sitting like kind of in a fetus position. But when I looked up, the person that was screaming at me the whole time was me. I was screaming at myself the whole time. So going back into my 20s, I would forgive more. I would be more vulnerable and allow myself to make mistakes. But obviously, that being said, I think the biggest tagline would have been, I'm enough. And the stuff that's around me does not define me. So that's the biggest thing that I would basically tell the guys that's in their 20s now. being all driven for success and building their lives up. And that's not wrong, but building their success stories and trying to build their empires. I want you to realize that the stuff that you are doing is not the stuff that's defining you. And the successes and the honors degrees and the masters and the doctorates and all that kind of stuff, it's not the stuff that defines you. You are enough. And the moment that you can just grasp that and not just let it be in your mind, but let it go down into your subconsciousness to know that you are enough. I think that's the biggest life lesson that I've learned, and that I would tell my 20-year-old self, is to say, you know what? You're enough.
Wow, awesome. And what a way to end off, and just take that, for everyone watching and listening. Really just go and think about that, and take 20 minutes to sit and reflect on it, and just bring it into your life and into your thoughts, and take it with you into the week, and just spend each day just asking yourself those questions and thinking about it. And I guarantee you your life will never be the same. You'll have such a level of liberation and freedom to live, and that actually opens you up for a lot more success and productivity and all the stuff that you actually are looking for, because it starts with who you are on the inside. So Roché, I want to thank you so much for this time. Just very quickly, can you tell everyone what you are currently doing, and how people can get in contact with you? I've got a business card here of Roché's business. If you can see it, it's called Joe Roche Coffee Co. I also have a privilege of being involved with Roché and this business. So this is, in South Africa, one of the best coffee companies that you can get. Really amazing coffee. But most importantly, as I think Roché will mention, this is not just about selling coffee, and it's not just about you buying coffee. But as you can see here, I'm not going to say all of the words on here, because I'm not sure if YouTube will allow us to say those things without pulling the video down, because it's just the keywords on community guidelines and things. But this company is really involved with, as Roché said, helping a lot of women and children who come out of the worst abusive environments that you can imagine. And not only getting them out of there and, thank you, we've done the job. That's not really what it's about. It's more about how do we take those people who are now on such a state of having no identity and having no, purpose or way forward in life, and how do we rehabilitate them? How do we give them skills? How do we affirm them in their identity so they can become complete and functioning people again, who have that sense of worth. And that's so important. So if you want to get involved there, the descriptions and the links will be in the website. But Roché, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, and maybe just a little bit of the other things that you are doing now, and how people can get in contact with you and what you offer and things like that.
Okay, so first of all, the coffee company is such a privilege. I'm a coffee snob and I love coffee, and it was such an honor starting this business with the end in mind that I know that you can't get premium coffee at retail stores. There is some that does that, but it's not the norm, because it's so expensive. And if you go to the only place that you actually drink premium coffee, if you go to the restaurant, and if you've got some of the more premium coffee restaurants like in Cape Town, and I'm not going to name the coffee shops there, but you can get their premium coffee at the store itself, but you can't buy that at a retail store. So we wanted to basically bring, and also their coffee is quite ridiculously high. You're looking at prices of 400 plus for a kilo. And we are selling a premium blend at a very, very costly price. We wanted to make premium coffee available for the normal household person that cannot afford premium coffee and that would normally buy conventional coffee at a retail store. We wanted to make it possible for you to buy premium coffee. And that's actually so amazing about this as well, is that we're not so much a coffee company, but we are so much more than that. That by buying our products, you are helping us in the good fight against human trafficking, and that you are basically making us stronger to do that. And by buying our coffee, you are creating an awareness outside for people to be vigilant and to basically be on the lookout and know what to look out for. As a father with 2 children, and my business partner, Johan, who also has 2 beautiful daughters, For us, it's a very, very big concern because the real pandemic out there today is not COVID-19. The real pandemic out there is our children being trafficked out there. If I can give you the stats, which I will not do over this video, it's horrific what's going out there. And it's actually happening so close to your house that you're not aware of that because it's a very dark industry. But for us, it's a very big pleasure being part of this and doing a lot of street work with our coffee. And so, yeah, we've got the privilege from Joe Roche Coffee to be part of this amazing organizations. And also, I'm doing life coaching and relationship guidance. So you guys can get hold of me on just Roché Oosthuizen. You'll see there's my personal page, and there's a big banner on there that's basically saying life coach. You can get hold of me via this video or just in the comments, or you can basically just log into my my social media profiles. On Instagram, just Roché Oosthuizen. And go and like our Joe Roche Coffee page and just go check out amazing coffee specials there as well. We are on social media with Instagram and with Facebook, so just Joe Roche Coffee, and then you can find us there. So pop me a question if you've got anything, or if you've got just a remark that you want to send. If you want to bless me with a negative comment, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you just want to bless me with something positive, and so, you know what, I've been through this as well, because I've got so many people that I've shared my story with that actually came back and said, you know what, Roché, thank God that you're willing to open up. And by opening up, you've liberated me in order to start bringing this out into the light as well. So if you want to do something like that, or like Justin said, if you don't have that inner circle of friends that you can share your vulnerability, then I will be that mentor for you. You're more than welcome to connect with me on Messenger. And yeah, I think that's pretty much that, Justin.
Awesome, Roché. Thank you so much. I do encourage anyone watching who has, or everyone watching who drinks coffee, to check that out. And as well as anyone who's struggling with the things we've been talking about, to reach out and to just, we will be of service in helping you and just overcoming those things. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and staying with us this time. Thank you once again to Roché for your time that you've taken out of your family time and your life to share this video. And thank you that you've added this value to all the viewers and the listeners. And I really do hope that everyone watching and listening has really taken this to heart and will really go forward with this in a new and positive light. So thank you so much again for joining. It's been an honor, and yes, we will definitely organize another session in the future.